Okay, a bit of a technical mishap there, but okay, we're live. Good evening. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so I'm a little bit out of practice, but hopefully we'll get there. So tonight, I haven't done one of these for about probably about a year now. For those of you that are just coming along tonight for the first time, started these back when everybody was at home during COVID, wasn't able to go anywhere or do anything. So we if you want to see previous episodes, then they're all available on YouTube. And this one, as soon as it's recorded, it will go onto YouTube as well. Tonight we've got two really nice guys. I've known them a few years. It's an hour long this evening. One of the problems that we might have is that these guys are both from Yorkshire and they can both talk for England. I shall bring them in. Here's Mike. And here's John. Good evening, gents.
Evening, everybody.
Evening.
So, thanks for. I hope you didn't mind that introduction, because you can both talk about dog. We've sat in bars numerous times talking about dogs and working dogs before. One of the reasons I wanted you chaps to come along is because all of the previous live talks that we've done have been, normal or sort of things, quite common areas that people work dogs. But you guys started with fire investigation. You're working other disciplines now as well, which we'll talk about in this. But fire investigation is where it all started for you. So John, how did it all start for you when you joined the fire service?
No, it was quite late on in my career, really. So I'm sort of just 20 plus years now. Me and Mick, so K9 FI, it was back end of 2014. But we was trying to get the fire dogs back into the brigade, or a few people were, for a few years before that, and it just stalled with the funding and things like that. I came on board, and it was the advent of community interest companies, and we sort of looked at that and how viable that was and that route to go, and that's what we did in the end. We ticked all those boxes as a community interest company, and that's the route we went. So got that up and running in 2014, and did our basic course 2014, 2015 with South Yorkshire Police, and a great guy who was our mentor, Dave Coss from Derbyshire, and went ops sort of by late January, February 2015, mate. I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
So from there, it was sort of piecemeal, really, and it took off. We never dreamt it'd have gone where it has today, really.
Yeah.
To be honest, it was steady away at first, and then we ended up being basically contracted back to our own brigade.
So, had you both? Was there an interest in working dogs then? Before sort of this came about, or?
Me personally, we both had working gun dogs and had trained our own gun dogs. I shot competitively from my teenage years, and I still do in various disciplines. But used to walk up game shoots, things like that. So it was just that the working gun dog side of it. Just thought, I wouldn't mind having a go at this firelark. I'm sure we could give it a good go. And we did. We sort of went in for that message.
You're making that sound easy, John. It took us 2 years to get that set up.
Yeah.
It took us a year to realise when you want to do something, you don't talk to middle management. You go straight to the top, because middle management don't take on extra tasks because it gives them work. So they always put carbosh on everything. Just about to give up, and I rang the chief up and offered it, give him an idea. thing is, other people had gone, said they wanted 2 fire dogs, but fire investigation within the fire service isn't a big priority. We get inspected every year by Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Fire Service and Police, and they produce a massive document, and fire investigations featured nowhere in it. So you can see how much thought, how much
value
that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, the value that they put on fire investigation. So they don't put money or budget into it. So if they took a fire dog on, they'd have to employ someone to look after that dog. They're responsible for the dog, the training. They'd have to have time off. But we went in from a totally different approach, saying we'll be responsible for the dog. We'll source our own training to the standards of what all the other fire dogs are at. So that's why I went through South Yorkshire Police. And all you do is pay for the hours you users. And they went for it. So if I give any message to anybody, don't give up at the first hurdle. Just you've got to look at it from how can I make this work? What can I offer them that nobody else is offering them? And between the two of us, we managed 24/7 cover 365 days a year, and we hit that 95% of the time. It's very rare that they can't get a dog off us if they want to use one. And
I don't think we've missed an incident, have we? We've not missed an incident in all the time.
No.
From 2015 until now, between two of us, we've just about covered everything.
Yeah.
And also to remind people watching, before you came on tonight, you both said you're both on call. You're always on call. So if something happens, then unfortunately, one or two of you might have to go.
What will leave one of us behind?
Yeah.
Well, people might be a little bit shocked to hear that there's no value put on fire investigation, and especially, you know, that people know the value of dogs because they find explosives and drugs and, you know, all sorts of things. And I would imagine having a dog, a fire investigation dog, you know, is a really valuable asset, especially I would imagine a scene which is potentially suspicious.
Well, it's more when there's a fire death. If there's a fire death or something tragic has happened, then no problem. They want the dog desperately. Then, well, not desperately, but they throw everything at it, don't they, John? When there's a fire death. The problem is the rest of the time it's stats, and not, you know, it's a lot of the time. To be fair,
those that do use them do value. And to be fair, a lot of the CSIs, you know, great because it's just your best chance of getting best evidence. And it's not just what you find at an incident; it's also what you don't find. So there's no true in fire investigation search. There isn't really a true negative because, you know, a negative search is a positive because it's ruled out. You know, that a liquid accelerant's being used, so you always get something out of it. If that makes sense.
The fire investigation has is it's a police problem, not a fire problem when it's arson. They have to do the conviction, so the dogs are actually working for the police. Police hate dealing with fire because they don't understand it, so they back off from it. So it's a real grey, you know, it's a real grey area sometimes, so that nobody wants to fund it. We've been lucky to get Humberside Police and Humberside Fire to jointly fund us by doing some. Well, our chief is quite, he's good in the incident. Humberside, he's quite forward thinking, isn't he, John?
Yeah, we was really lucky. Our chief has been really supportive. He happens to be the national lead on FI, so he's really been supportive. And you know, I think maybe in different circumstances we might have struggled, but having the backing of the chief and the dep and that, really, we've had a lot of support both off those early on in the fire side and the original guy who was with us, who took us through it when we first started. One of the guys called Al Cunningham. He was really supportive, put a lot of the early stuff in place. A lot of things you won't think about, you know, just how the basic SOPs, how I was going to operate welfare for us afterwards, you know, post-incident welfare and things like that. He put a lot of work into it. and more recently with our line managers, the head pollster and things like that, with the police being really proactive and really supportive and in training. To say we've been on numerous training courses and things that have been provided through them.
When I say FI is highly thought of, the people who do it think of it and are really professional about it. I'm thinking as the governing people who govern the fire service, it isn't high. They don't think a lot about it. Those who are actually doing the fire investigation, they obviously they like using the dogs, and but a lot of brigades like West Yorkshire, which neighbours us, we go there every now and again. Their FIs would love to use the dogs, but their senior management aren't interested in using dogs. You've never had dogs. We've managed all these years. Why do we need dogs now? Sort of thing. So you come up against that quite a bit.
And how many, just to give people an idea, you're obviously based up in Humberside. How many fire services are there in the UK, and how many have fire investigation dogs?
Oh, there's probably at the minute, dog-wise, you're only looking around back up to about 17 dogs in the country.
Yeah.
So that's they're quite thinly spread.
Yeah.
So there's not many.
Was it 52 brigades in England, and then you've got fire services there. Northern Ireland, Scotland are separate.
Yeah.
England and Wales, I think, is about. Is it that right, John? About 52 brigades?
Okay, it's somewhere around there. Yeah, off the top of my head.
So, but there's 18 dogs spread out around the country that are operational at the moment that we know of anyway.
Yeah, so 50 plus fire services, and about 18 of them have got dogs.
And they're all run separate. They're all run differently. Some employ a fire investigation officer with a dog. Some have a dedicated dog handler. Some have a civilian who's employed by the fire service with the dog. So there's no one way of doing it. Everybody does it different.
Yeah.
And even to the point of where we train, the substances we train on, we'll train on anything that's liquid and ignitable. Our dogs will iron hit. Some of the dogs aren't trained on acetone and alcohols, where ours are trained on acetone. So there's no one standard yet, although we're getting there with it. But at this present time, there's no one standard at the moment, what we're all trained on.
So that sort of leads me on to my next question. A fire investor. So people watching this that might, I only know sort of what you guys have told me and what I've heard sort of elsewhere. But for those that are watching that don't know what a fire investigate, what is a fire investigation dog? How is it used? And what can it detect and not detect?
Basically, well, they used to be called hydrocarbon detection dogs, which isn't strictly true. I just say fire dogs because it's, as Mick says, if it's a flammable liquid, that they'll indicate on it. And they use post-scene. Usually, it can be immediately after the fire. We've done some for insurance companies that are weeks afterwards and still got
longest one was 6 months actually, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's so variable. It's such a hard field. Is the fire investigation? I think when it comes to detection, I think we've got the short straw. It's got to be one of the hardest things to do because what we're looking for is always diminishing. It's highly volatile liquids that, in given circumstances, it can be gone in minutes, hours. So it's always reducing, which don't help matters.
So take for example, would again, this is if you train a dog to find, a little bit of petrol that's been burnt in a fire, does it smell differently?
Yeah, do you know that we've been let down by science a little bit because nobody's done, but it does, and we also weathers. So we'll do burnt samples, neat samples, what we call weathered. So we'll just put it out and leave it. Large quantities, small quantities, because the issue as well, unlike Explo and other detection, with it being so volatile, if you get a large amount, you might think, oh, that's going to be easy. But we had a job recently with poor little socks, and it was everywhere. And you can imagine something that's as volatile as that. You go into, which was like basically a 4 or 5 room flat, and it's like you didn't need a dog to smell it. You know, it hit you. But where are you going to take your best sample from? Where are you going to get your best evidence? And he was just so overwhelmed. So in them cases, the first thing I do is like open all the doors and windows, try and vent as much as it can. And we still couldn't get, it was getting lots of areas of interest, but no real indication because he was just so overwhelmed. It was everywhere. So then we start looking at burn patterns. You know, you're reading the scene then from fire spreading patterns and looking at how has it got at that height or this height. And then we'll take samples. And often we'll remove something out of the proven area with a dog, do a clearing area, get him to run it, that it's negative. Or CSI will get the brown paper bags or the brown paper roll that's proven absolutely sterile, lay the item out that we've removed and get the dog to run that and see if we get a hit. And in some circumstances, when there's that much about, that's what you've got to do because they're overwhelmed. And then you can go.
You've got the other end of the scale, haven't you, John? When it's petrol, no longer petrol. So the dogs can go down to parts per trillion, and they probably can outdo the GCMS here that samples are sent to be tested. And like petrol's made up of hundreds of different chemicals, and on their graphs they'll say if it's got these spikes on the graph, it's petrol. Now, when it's been exposed to heat, a lot of them spikes are gone. They're no longer there. The volatiles have been burnt off. The dog's hitting it as petrol, but the GCMS is no longer calling it petrol. So they're saying your dog's rubbish. There's nothing there. Well, that's not true. We've had that one, that old job, if you remember, John, where we knew petrol was there. They only gave us one positive hit, which was on a petrol can, which is no surprise. We got a hit on that. But this is an area of the building, no sun had hit it, and it was damp, and the petrol had survived behind the skating board, and the dogs hit on it. Even Socks, when he was in training, this is one of the few jobs where we managed to get a trainee dog on the job, even hit on it. 3 dogs hit on this thing, and they came back as negative. But then you find out, well, how did they test it? Well, they tested it. That's a whole different subject. If they don't test it with the latest gear, there's a chance they're going to come back as negatives as well. So then you get from one extreme where you've got too much petrol and you've got to take swabs, and you get the other bit where it's so little there, the dog's hitting it, but it's coming back as inconclusive. It comes back as it comes back as inconclusive.
But for us, it's really frustrating that because you know, so like we know, and we've tested our dogs to that down to parts per trillion because we was part of a study for one of the guys doing his FI degree, and it was all blind testing, and it was brigade service shirts with a pen pocket, and they'd put how many mil was it? 1 milliliter, I think. Yeah. 1 mil on the shirt pocket. They left one for 12 hours, one for 24 hours, and then we ran the dogs. All the dogs hit it, and they're all in nylon bags, all bagged up with the neck open, and you're doing it blind round. They all got that. Then each of them was washed once and left, and we run it again. And some dogs got it. Our dogs all nailed them really convincingly. And then there was washed a second time, and before we get to the second time, though, the first time there was retested with a gas mask spec, and it come back as, you know, parts per trillion. They were struggling at that point to define whether it was petrol or not. They washed it just for ourselves, then not under the controlled conditions, but it was washed again, and we just threw all the shirts out in a room randomly. So that was left all that time and washed twice. And the dogs still knocked on it. Really? They're still indicated on them. And then, of course, when the paper come out, but yes, so you're down to parts per trillion. So it's the only thing is that undoes you at jobs, because your dog knocks, I've got a hit. It goes for testing, it comes back inconclusive, and the powers that be are like, no, your dog's shit. It's what's it doing? But we're confident, and you just got to trust your dog, haven't you? It's back to that, trust your dog.
Yeah.
Because I've had a job like that where it was a big high-rise block of flats with a communal lift, and it must have been 20, 30 metres to the living room of this flat, and it was all opened up, being ventilated. And the lift doors open, Socks went on a lead, he was just there in his harness. As soon as the door was open, he went into wait mode, he just run down the corridor, past everybody in the doorway to the flat, went and laid down on a melted patch in the middle of the living room that was previously the sofa. And he just waited for me to get there. He was just laid there whining until I got to him. So CSI took it, and it come back as inconclusive. And I'm like, the dog's knocked it from 20, 30 metres away.
Yeah, but with the FI, there's quite a lot to it, isn't there? So you've got the dog's alert, then you've got the CSI, they've got to bag it properly. So they bag it properly. So it could be, if it's hydrocarbon, so it's petrol based, it needs to be put in a nylon bag. If it's alcohol, acetone, it needs to be in a plastic bag. Now, a lot of the CSIs are aware of this, so we can lose evidence that way. Then what happens is, to get this bag, and they'll go and take it in and put it in a evidence room, a heated evidence room, and it'll sit there for weeks on end before it goes to be tested.
Sometimes months.
Even, yeah. And what it actually says in the forensic handbook is evidence should be sent at the highest priority to be tested, because even though these nylon bags do hold it, if you put it in a room for months on end, it will filter through at some point. You'll end up with nothing left there by the time you send it to, so you're always, everything's working against you. You know, when you do operations, training, everything, you train to succeed, operations, everything's set up for you to fail. So that's
so just listening from some of those sort of examples you've given there, we rely heavily on the dogs, and then it's the humans and the science that let us down, really. The dogs are doing their part, and it's the people that aren't bagging it up correctly and storing it correctly. But from the start, the dog is correct. And well, as you know, I worked on a project last year, and I had some advice from you, because it was similar to what you deal with. And it's nice to hear what you've just said, because the two dogs that I trained to find parts per trillion have been regularly finding the odour, and they've been taking the samples away for testing, and the mass spectrometer is constantly saying no, we can't find anything. So the dogs, I know the same as you, those dogs are finding the odour. Unfortunately, it's the machine that's letting it down.
Wasn't it the Americans spent $16 billion on trying to get a piece of kit that could outdo the dog for bomb detection, and then they give up on it and invest heavily now in dogs, don't they? So it goes to prove that the technology isn't up to the dog's nose.
No,
it's still miles behind, isn't it?
Yeah, you can put all the money you want into developing a mechanical nose, but it's not going to happen, is it?
But the only thing is, with our problem is we can end up in court of law. Now, you don't want your dog on a dog indication convicting somebody of potentially of murder. It has to be science-backed, because the dog does alert. And as we know, dogs can generalise a little bit on the substance certain, and there's a lot of household products that contain petrochemicals. So we've still got to go very careful. So, as we've said, if it goes away and it comes back inconclusive, if the FI is there backing you, say it's petrol, then I think we've got a strong argument. But if you're just relying solely on dog evidence, you're on dodgy ground. Then you can't really do that. Ideally, in an ideal world, the dog is a presumptive test that's sent away, and it's the testing says whether it's petrol or not. And if someone goes free because of that, that's probably right, to be fair. If they say it's inconclusive and they get away with it, probably right. You rather that than convict somebody falsely.
But that comes back down to part of your searching though as well, because obviously there's a lot of background, as Mick says, contamination, but that's part of your scene examination. You know, when we're doing these fire scenes, sometimes we'll run an initial, so let the dog have its head. You'll pick out areas of interest, and especially if that area of interest fits with burn patterns and severity of fire spread, fire growth, and things like that. You know, when you look at a house, if it's gone through the roof in a matter of minutes, you know, and you haven't got a lot of fire loading in there, you think, well, this doesn't quite add up. So you've got all that to take on board. And then as you go through the scene, often it's like a archaeological dig. You're taking, you know, you'll get your areas of interest, and then we'll be scraping layers off, and so the dog can go in multiple times as well. You know, and some scenes will be there all day, and you'll take, you know, 10, 15 mil of debris out, and then you'll go back in because you're looking for anything, you know, any ignition sources, cabling, candle wicks, cigarette butts, and this is in an absolute catastrophe of a house that's, you know, a burnt shell. You know, you're absolutely going through layer by layer, and you'll come across cosmetics and things like that. But as you're going through the areas and you're turning things over and you're getting indication, you know, if you find, as I've done a job, maybe a sports bag and it's got aftershaving or something like that, you can sort of say, right, I've got a hit here, but this is all cosmetics. We can just discount that. Or a bathroom cabinet that's been in a fire and, you know, fallen to bits. You can sort of have a good guess at, you know, I think this is being there. It's something not relevant to the fire scene as such. So there's so much more, all those other little pieces of the jigsaw.
I think in this discipline, I think it'd be very hard just to go on as a dog handler who's got a dog that can alert on accelerants. There's quite a lot more to it to make the dog, to give the dog its best chance of succeeding. You've got to know where to put that dog. Where you can't do a full fire scene tight. You've got to know areas where to really nail, you know, let your dog go tight and search. But the worst thing for me, John, is when you turn up to a job and they say, accelerant in there, it's gone through the roof, we've arrested somebody, we just need your dog to find it, and you go in there and your dog finds nothing, and there's nothing there. And they start scratching it. Oh, no, it looks as though it's accelerant. I had one where it was this, and I had this job where, the guy's arrested, it's obviously accelerant, look at the way it's burned, it's gone really quick, it's rapid fire growth. All right, okay, put the dog in. Dog finds nothing. I think, oh God, here we go. So you put pressure on yourself trying to get your dog to find it. I can't get it to find anything, which is good. It sort of shows that I can't force my dog to false negative, false indicate, but you're putting pressure on it. And they say, oh, okay. So they go in and start looking again, and the house was high fire loading. The downstairs door was open, the upstairs windows open, so you get a chimney effect. And he'd left the cooker on, and he'd left a blanket, like a tea towel on the cooker, which had caught, and he's upstairs, and it's such fire, one of these hoarders, there was that much fire loading, it soon caught and soon splashed through the house. This guy had been arrested for setting his house on fire, and it was an accident. I'm there thinking, my dog can't find, my dog's broke, can't find anything. When he actually goes down to it, now dog's right again. It's
having a real good understanding of your odor, you know, how all the volatiles that we're looking for work, how they work, and you know, a lot of the flammable liquids, they'll be low down and things like that, and there's certain things that happen to them that you've got to understand when you're searching for them. It's really hard to without that background to get your head round.
One of the questions that I was going to ask you actually is, how important is it that you are? I don't know I don't know what to call you these days. Firemen, firefighters.
Yeah.
How important is it that you are a firefighter first and have an understanding of fire, but you know, before being a fire investigation dog handler?
It isn't essential. Yeah. It isn't essential, but it helps definitely. So I don't think you have to. But it gives you so many advantages that we don't realise. So we're very good at doing dynamic risk assessments. So we can go into a building, we know where the floor is going to be in safest if it's been involved in a severe fire. So just little things like that. We know how fire affects buildings, where it'll be safe and unsafe, and where it is safe to walk. Just silly little things like that. Because you can learn all this, you could go on. Because there's, I think West Mids is Matt Dixon at West Mids. I don't think he was a fireman, but he's been a fire dog handler there for a long time, and he's learnt it on the job. But it must have been hard for him to do that initially. Having that understanding of fire certainly helps us, but it's not essential. But it's a nice one to have, and it helps. You can always. We weren't fire investigators before we did this, but we spent months reading books to get ourselves up to speed on it. Didn't we? Yeah, we're always.
Yeah, but in just that, we've had. I mean, by that point, you know, I'd both me and Mick were at one of the busiest stations in our area. So we've probably attended thousands and thousands of fires in our time. So, you know, you've got that data bank of to draw on. You've got that experience to draw on. So there's that, and you know, knowing your subject matter and how the liquids move, sump, and things like that. Because I don't know, it's like petrol, for example. Its flash point is like minus 43 degrees C. So most flammable liquids is, imagine a kettle. So when you turn your kettle on to boil, the steam coming off it. Now, if you had a cup of petrol, it's boiling at room temperature. That's how you get your vapor. So a lot of volatiles are like that. So it's knowing your vapor movement and how they react. Because we had a job a few years ago where we'd got CCTV of them breaking a window, throwing a full galvanized bucket of petrol through a window, throwing in a lit toilet roll to ignite it. And it was into a kitchen, and it was all hard surfaces. Everything was tiled for mica, splashbacks. And we've seen the CCTV go, oh, you're going to get loads of hits. But because it was done so quick, the petrol didn't have time to really get anywhere. It just flashed, totally consumed itself. And we thought, this is going to be easy. And we're struggling. You know, the dog's like, yeah, I've got a bit of interest, but it's knowing the lengths you've got to go to. You think it's here somewhere, but where is it going to do? Because it starts, so you've got your pool, but a lot of the time when it's ignited, the flame front spreads to the extremities. So it pushes like a little tsunami of petrol in front of it. And it pushes that to places where you wouldn't think it would be. So it could be a long way from your actual initial seat of fire. You know, and I've picked any capillaries into floor tiles and things like that. I've picked up floor tiles. I mean, that kitchen, I smashed the units to bits, and we got a hit because a bit had gone down a splashback. And that was
smashed the units to bits because the fireman, there was no need to do that. That was just because he likes doing that.
Stu knows what I like about breaking into their stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So another question again, and for people that know me, I go on about this all the time. Training. So training for some people, you know, you can replicate training quite easily. You know, you can for a drugs dog, you know, you can hide drugs in a bedroom, in a sock drawer or underwear drawer or whatever, you know, and you've got some realistic training there. How on earth do you replicate a fire scene? Can you or can't you? You know, what and how different is training to the real thing?
Well, I've had more problem with my dog than John did with his dog at 6. He's got spaniels and they're just mad and run around no matter where you put them. But I had a Labrador that thinks and it's quite clever. And so when in training, the best we did was derelict buildings. So it's not good. They take you to derelict buildings and do a lot of derelict buildings, which is nothing like a fire scene still. They find there's two things here. One, the environment is totally different. And two, when you put out petrol, they find it really easy in training. But fire scenes, because it's been weathered and been subjected to heat, it's a lot harder for them to find. So in training, it's quite easy for them and they enjoy it. Fire scenes, my dog, my Labrador, she works 100% different. So I did 6 weeks training with my dog as a novice handler, went to fire scene and thought, what is my dog doing? She ain't working. and she crawls at a snail's pace on a fire scene. Really, really thorough, systematic going around. But it's very hard to get a flow with her. You know, where you're supposed to flow with your search dog to get it to move, and don't worry about it if it misses something, just get that flow. You can't flow in a fire scene because the environment's turned upside down. You've got holes in the floor, the chairs are turned over, there's that much furniture in the place. You're constantly boxing your dog in a corner. I had to relearn how to read my dog totally in a fire scene compared to training. It's just totally different.
It's the ultimate discrimination test in a fire scene because you've got all the back. Don't forget, predominantly, nearly everything's made out of a hydrocarbon. These dogs differentiate between naturally occurring hydrocarbons and something that's being added. So their poor little brain and you know, they're working overtime. They're sifting out all those other burn naturally occurring, and it's part of our licensing testing is the discrimination test where it's 8 burn pots that's made up of a matrix of plastics, papers, polystyrenes, all laid up in a tin, which are then fired. Only one of them's initiated with a flammable liquid, but then they're smothered out and cooled, and then the dogs have got to run the tins as you would do any other tin. And that's part of the discrimination test on licensing. But in a fire scene, they're getting hit with that constantly on a massive scale. So they have got to sort of, you know, work the way through it and be steady. So that's where we've got a nice balance with Mick having Etta. Aston is absolutely bouncing. He's crazy. But so we've got Etta for really detailed stuff. If you want to cover a large open area rapidly, Aston's got a great nose on him. You stick him out. We did a massive cinema and bingo complex up north a while ago, and it was like a bomb site. And Aston covered it in minutes, got an area of interest. Then we rested him and put Etta in to the area of interest to detail it, and it worked really well. You know.
And how quickly, how soon after, you know, after a building has been on fire, you know, how soon after that is a dog expected to, you know, is there? I mean, I'm trying to picture it. Is there still like, you know, is there still water there, and is it still hot, and you know what kind of scene is it?
I've done a clandestine drugs factory. There was two quite big industrial units, and because of the fire loading and the chemicals and things that was inside, it was going really well. So they literally washed it out the door, and it was ankle deep in water still, and the dogs were still getting hits. It was still a really good, successful search. That's
another one though. Your substances. So if they set the fire with something like acetone or an alcohol, and they put that much water on, it's unlikely you'll get anything because it's soluble in water. Where
it's miscible.
Petrochemicals like diesels, white spirits, they'll remain even though you put tons of water on them, so you'll still get hits.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting. So there's a possibility that putting the fire out, depending on what's been used, they're washing evidence away.
It's down to the crews. We're getting a lot better than we used to be of having that forensic awareness. It's part of as you turn up as a crew, and this is why with the stuff you've got to have that forensic knowledge. I mean, a lot of the things we go to are fatalities and are murder scenes. So you've got to have that forensic awareness, that forensic background as well, sort of along with it. So that's another element to it. Just to, and the dogs look at you funny when you're masked up. You know, you're in a white suit and you're masked up and things like that, and they just look at you. If you're trying to give them commands and things like that, and it's like, who are you? When you've got 3 or 4 blokes in the room, you know, all in white suits. I've had it where Aston's run round. It's like, are you daddy? You know, so.
And are you, like, again, as I've sort of discussed with you in the past, for a lot of my work, I can't replicate where I'm going to be searching for various reasons. Sometimes I'm actually find myself training during an operation. Are you able to put dogs that you're training into live scenes or scenes that were live, in fire scenes? Can you do training in them?
Not
Well, I may
regularly,
answer
but
that. It's just recently.
yeah, it's not something you can always do, but yeah, it's something. If you've got a dog in training, like I have at the moment, I've got my Eto's will be 10 this year, so I'm probably going to replace her at the end of it. When I say replace her, retire her, and hopefully have a sprocker that I've got. And we're just starting to train him with fire, and I'd take him with me every job. I don't expect every time I can do it, but if after a job, if I'll have a word with the CSI and police, whoever's there, I'll ask their permission. Are you happy with me just to run my dog over the scene? And it isn't about him getting fines or anything. It's purely environmental.
Yeah.
We can work on the fines later. Environmental is always the thing that they fail on. You can train your dog to find something easily, but trying to get it to find it when it's stressed out because the building's pitch black and he slipped through a hole in the floor and he has to sort himself out and get on with it. It's a whole different game, and it's always the environment to fail on.
Yeah. We was on about that earlier on. They're so oppressive. I mean, some of the fire scenes, you won't believe how horrible it is. And to replicate it, if we can get permission and the scene's of no use or benefit, sort of criminally or anything like that, and we can do it, we will. Because even at Fire Service College, we have burn units, which are lorry containers. Even they get donated with discarded furniture and things like that, and they'll make a mock-up room and burn it for part of the FI courses, and you'll go in with a dog. But the small, it doesn't replicate it on the size of a house, and it's the same.
You're right, it's impossible to replicate a house with somebody's living in, with daily objects in there, with cleaning it. They'll put stuff in there like furniture, but they won't have things like cleaning fluids that you find in a house, and aftershaves and perfumes, which are in an everyday house. So if you can when we get the opportunity to put them in something like that, we jump at it, but they're very few and far between.
Yeah, try searching a restaurant that's been on fire and the fridge freezers have exploded and there's bacon and sausages and everything everywhere, because we've had it. Aston's really good. If when he's working, he won't take a biscuit.
Well, you know all about that, Stu, don't you? Your dog helped itself to some meat the other month.
Listen, yeah, I mean, as people know, I'm a spaniel man, really, but that's the bloody red Labrador that I've got. I take him in search of delicatessen. The first thing he heads for is the meat counter.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've seen pictures. I've seen pictures in the past that some other FIs have shown me of fire scenes. I mean, some of them. I mean, when I do environmental training with my dogs, it's a case of taking them to places where I'm gonna search, and shops and garages, storage facilities, and town centres, that kind of thing. But I would imagine to do environmental training for an FI dog. I mean, some of the fire scenes that I've seen, have been, I mean, they're so I'm presuming they can be so hazardous as well. So much, glass, and as you were saying earlier, water. Really not nice environments at all. So I mean, that must be a struggle with some dogs.
Well, yeah, they have to wear the boots, otherwise they're going to kick the paws. And now we're getting it more and more where the CSI, the job was there yesterday, John, I didn't tell you this, they insisted they wore boots because they're worried about the dog cross-contaminated. Not worried about us cross-contaminated, but for some reason they're always worried about the dog cross-contaminating the scene, which I can't get my head around. But they're insisting that the dog wore boots at that fire scene just to prove that the boots are removed from a sealed bag after they've been cleaned and everything to prove that they're not cross-contaminated. But the boots is a thing. It's a bit like you using your computer with a pair of gloves on, isn't it? You're removing one of their senses in respect, and their ability in summer to lose the heat as well. So you have to be careful on that as well.
That one of the reasons that I wanted you guys to come on here is because you're doing you're doing the job. You are, you're operational, you're active, and as you were just saying then, Mike, you did a job yesterday. How many times a week or a month are your fire investigation dogs being used?
The dogs, we're having a quiet spell at the minute, actually. We haven't been used that much so far this year. We've only had a few jobs, but normally when things are... COVID has been a bit weird with us. That quietened things down a bit. I think it's because people are in more. I don't know. We had less fires with COVID, but it was averaging 3 times a month with the fire dogs. Although we're a bit quieter at the minute, but we're not one of the busy. Dave Coss in Derbyshire, he's real busy. He's out all the time. We're quite a small brigade, although we do go into other brigade areas. I was in Links yesterday assisting there. We've got to Manchester, been to Norfolk. We do get about a bit, but that's not the norm. We get some out of area about once every 6 weeks or so. But being a small brigade, we don't get lots of fires.
Yeah.
Get enough.
Well, that's only a really small bit of it. I mean, you think that's... But other people on the plus side is that proves that our prevention, our proactive, obviously the fire dogs are reactive. Everything's on about the proactive. So all the community safety, things like that, but we do a massive amount, school education. We do a program with various, not in mainstream education kids and things like that. It's fire awareness, safety, antisocial behaviour around the emergency services. I do the young offenders arson intervention stuff with the dogs, because we know the dogs are a great engagement tool. It's like, oh, dog, what was the dog there for? I remember. And it's just now with COVID, that's just kicking back in, and we've done got every school in the area, and they're looking at rolling that out before COVID. That's going to go out to every year, sort of 6, 7. It's going to be a rolling cycle every 2 years that will go through all the schools. So that's just picking up. I've done 2 this week. We've got 1 the end of the month. So that's a massive part. It's the sort of public education side of it.
Yeah, that's. As you know, I work all over the UK, but I've spend quite a bit of time in Hull because they've got quite a bit of an issue with illegal tobacco up there. But when we've done public engagement, well, you've been along, John. We've done public engagement. I must say, Humberside Fire have always supported those events really well with your community safety staff. And as you say, dogs are ideal for interacting with the public and school kids, and
a thing that we often overlook as well is when we go to a fire scene is the positive effects just having a dog there. Forget about it working. The one job I was there yesterday, somebody's business had been attacked by arsonists, and although luckily it wasn't too bad, it wasn't a particularly bad job, this one. But she was so happy to see the dog, wanted to take photographs of the dog. We've had that with we've had fire deaths, and everyone's really glum. The investigators are really serious. CSI are there, the SIO, the CID are there. You bring the dog out, and it does lift people. Just the fact that the dog's there, and it's not what it's there for, but it is something that I think it's quite useful actually for some people. It just lifts them a little bit when we have crappy jobs.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. One question I want to ask you, which one of you hit on just earlier, is in indication and changes in behaviour and reading your dog. How often? Now, again, I go on about social media indications all the time. People training on a scent wall, and people have this ideology that when a dog finds something, it freezes or it sits or it stands and stares. But a lot of the time, certainly for my work, it's just a change in behaviour. And so can you tell us a bit about changes in behaviour? And does your dog, do you, if you've got a foot of water there, do you expect your dog when it finds something to go and sit? What are your thoughts and experience on that?
It depends on the. I mean, I've between Socks and Aston, two totally different dogs. Aston will just, he's usually stud, but the environment it's whatever the dog will present, whatever the environment dictates. You know, if you can't get to it, they'll go really tight in an area. If Aston will sort of go down as if he's going to indicate, but you can't quite get to it, because I mean, some of the times it gets encapsulated in ceilings and plasterboard and things like that, and where it actually is, the source is, it could be coming out a few meters away through a sheet of plasterboard that's come down, and you'll get that general area, and he'll stand there and he'll be looking back at me as much say, there's something going on here, Dad. And then, you know, we'll go in, CSI will take the pictures, we'll, as we say, we'll uncover a little bit, and we might have to do that a few times. He's got like a little bit of an area of interest, and we'll text him out, put him in, text him out, and it's almost narrowing down. It's as if he's quartering, basically, like a spaniel. He's getting nearly there. But if you can get straight at it, yeah, he'll give a classic.
One thing I always have to do, though, is they have to be quite close to it. So they have to do, the nose has got to be pointing at what they're alerting at. Otherwise, we don't know where to. It's no good the dog sitting back and looking at an area, because we wouldn't know where to take the sample from. So we need the dog to get as close to the source as possible. In training, Etter's freeze it's a thing to behold in training. It's a waggy tail, stamping her front paws, nose at it, jobs. It's a lot more vague in an incident, but I suspect the odour is a lot more vague at an incident as well. So I get a bit of a waggy tail. That's how I can tell it's not food, because she doesn't wag her tail when she's food. She's just straight in there. But when it's an alert, Etta is a lot more vague. I can read it. She's free. She stands still and she'll put her head down. But in training, she doesn't lift her head. At a job, she keeps looking back at me, and I think, why are you doing it? Why are you looking back at me in a job? But in training, it's a nice phrase. But I don't know. Maybe it's because she's a little bit less sure, because the order isn't quite the same as it is in training. But there's enough there for me to read it, if you know what I mean, and get the result from it. But it isn't the same as training.
And Socks, because he's a little bloody yappy cocker spaniel. He's really emotional. He'll, if it's, you know, okay, and he can get to it, he'll lay, and he'll go down to that 20 mil dot on the floor or whatever it is. He'll be like hovering, you know, within millimeters of it. But if you can't get at it, he's got it, but he can't quite get there. Oh, he plays up bloody hell. He'll stand there doing a little dance, yappy, you know, and then looking at me like, come on. And if I don't go to him quick enough, he runs to me, runs to it. He does a refind. He's like, look, I'm telling you, it's here. Come on, get your skates on. And again, you know, he'll start digging stuff out, and then he'll be, oh, you know, thanks. Well, you know, then he'll give you a classic indication. But a lot of the time, the environment doesn't dictate you can get there. You know, so
being able to read your dog is vital, you know, for you. Then, you know.
Yeah, well, our system search, we always do that. What we call the bend. Throw them in, let them have the head. See what comes of that, what areas, you know, and we give an area of interest, as in somewhere where the dog repeatedly, unguardedly returns to, or has a change in olfactory rate, which is our definition in our reports. That's what I give as our area of interest. So then from the areas of interest, if you don't indicate, because it could be, you know, he's getting a little bit that's leaching through from somewhere, and we'll start uncovering things. Then we can go a bit more systematic, put more systematic searching, get him to sort of into an area and slow down and check it, or then literally go forensic and, you know, finger check. And sometimes, you know, when you're getting down to them parts per trillion with all the background orders in a job, you might come to that, and that's led again by reading your dog, the scene, what you're reading at the scene. it's just all them other little bits that go with it.
And how? So, John, what dogs do you use for the FI work? What breeds and how old are they?
Well, Aston, he's 10 this year. He's a Springer. He is mad as a box of frogs. Socks. We brought Socks online because Aston early on blew a cruciate ligament and he had a TTA op. And we thought that he's probably going to, not be able to be ops, but he's just mad for it still. So we brought Socks online and drip fed him, really. Just took him along to jobs, similar thing that we've done to Archie. And we was just not in any rush with him, getting his environmental up. And with Aston being so mad, I wanted to try and take the edge off Socks. Aston's one of these springers that if you're on a first floor and there's no window, he's gone out the window and run up the stairs, back up the stairs to me.
Yeah.
And you think, purposely in our DRA, I've had a policeman stood there, and the idea was, just watch that window.
Yeah.
And he's got lost in translation somewhere, and the dog's just given him the slip and gone out. Whereas Socks, he's just he's a lot steadier. Apart from, say, he's a Yappy Cocker Spaniel, and he's 7 this year.
Right.
He's very emotional and very vocal. He can be quite annoying.
Yeah.
So I'm working Etta. She's 10 this year. She's a Labrador. I've just seen one of the questions, and he was asking if would put them in an unsafe area. Now, Etta is a dog where if there's a hole in the floor, she will tiptoe to the edge of it and sniff real carefully around it. She's quite safe to work in areas. But with the dogs, we won't put them in an area where wouldn't be allowed to go. So if it's an unsafe structure and they said, can you put the dog in? The proviso is, I can, but if the dog gets stuck, we've got to be allowed to go in and get the dog out. If you won't allow us to go in the building to get the dog out, the dog don't go in. But the other dog we're working is Archie. He's about, what is he now, John? 14, 15 months old.
Yeah.
We're training up to be a fire dog, which has been started about 6 weeks with him now. But that again, I've planned. There's no rush with him. I plan to take it over the year. Etta's licensed till December, and I would expect if all goes well with him, I'll just take it over the year, train him over the year, and so it'll be nicely. It'll be environmentally sound hopefully by then, and just take it slow with no rush with him. So we'll just take it steady.
And how often are you training? With the dogs. Is it once a month, or is it
because we've got Archie now. The training ups because I've got a trainee. The others, we may as well throw the others in and train them whilst we're training him. So I'm training Archie. Just small, only little things. Maybe just indication training, nothing else. On a tin, I might do that, but he'll get something just about 5 days a week. And then maybe a search once or twice a week, and then whilst we've got the search set up, we'll let the other dogs do it. But when you get a dog that's 9 or 10 year old, they're not going to forget it now, are they? I reckon we could leave them for a year and they'd still do the job. I don't think there's a problem, to be fair, but we do it because they enjoy doing it now. If they haven't had a run out for a while, just to keep their interest, we do it to keep them happy.
Aston's like a robot. You put him now. When we was training, they used to throw all the old school tricks in the book, put stuff really tight in corners, and do all the tricks to try and catch you out as a handler. So we had that drummed into us because we had really good instruction. He was the top guy, and he's just autopilot. He'll do a room, and part of the search usually, if it's a smallish room, he'll go clockwise, anti-clockwise, cross corners. If he'll run cross corners. And if he's done that in an average house room, if there's anything there, he's going to knock it just on that. But then he'll go checking touch points. He'll automatically jump up at door handles and things like that. I don't have to say anything. Just stand there and watch him do. And then if there's anything you think you want him to do that you think he's missed, then I'll say, go on, check. But it's quite.
We have very little input now, do we? When we work them, when we train them, we have very little input with the older dogs. We're there just to pick up the dog poo. Really, they do the rest.
Yeah, it's just a shame they can't type the reports.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's yeah, I'm just looking to see any questions. I know I've always got loads of questions. I was looking at the questions that have been coming up, and people have been sending. But as we've been going along, you've been answering them all actually. Yeah. Okay.
But obviously, I was going to say, onto the tracking.
You've got 2 seconds left, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, that is we're at 1 hour now, and all we've covered is fire investigation. I mean, I think what we're probably going to have to do, if it's all right with you guys, is to get you back, because what people that obviously might not follow you or know you, Canine Fire Investigation. You not only do you do the fire investigation, but you also do the scent specific trailing, tracking for missing people for the police as well, which is probably a whole other hour, I would imagine. But unfortunately, we're at the hour. It's flown by, as I thought it would be with two Yorkshiremen. I can't thank you enough, for coming and talking about your specific area, because it's very different to to other people that have come on here and spoken about things. Thank you very much, guys. You're on Facebook and on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
So I'd ask people to go along to your it's Canine Fire Investigation, isn't it?
And Jon at Canine FI, but it's the Facebook and such as that. Yeah, it's just Canine Fire Investigation.
Yeah. Go along and and have a look to see what Jon and Mike are doing. Thank you guys. It's been good, totally different. And if we can get you back for another hour to listen to your your experience and knowledge of your tracking and trailing, that would be good if you agreed to that at some point.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, no problem.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thanks very much. Thanks very much for people for coming in and watching. I don't know, on my screen here, I can see up in the top left corner how many people have been watching, and we've had a constant. We've had about between 60 and 70 people watching this live on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So it's been quite a bit of interest. So thank you very much, and we shall see. Well, we'll see what happens on the next live talk.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, guys.
Cheers, Stu. We'll catch you soon, hopefully.
You're brilliant. Thanks very much for coming.
Cheers, everybody.
Yes, thank you.